Today we are exploring New Mexico Road 9, and we're in the southwest kind of boot heel of New Mexico, and we're going to go the width of that boot heel that starts in Arizona, or a couple miles from Arizona. As you look at these mountains over here, we are a couple miles from the border, and we're going to head over to El Paso, which is, obviously in Texas. And so from Arizona to Texas is what we're gonna do. And we're in the very southern extreme part of the state. We border with Mexico. We may see the wall at some point in this video. The Road 9 is about 109 miles long, and then it becomes a county road kind of towards the end. So we'll see what that looks like. Hopefully we find some historic communities, some cool, interesting places, and I think we're gonna go over the Continental Divide even, and should be a pretty scenic drive. So let's go ahead and get started.
Our first community along New Mexico Road 9 here is Animas. It was founded in the 1750s by the Spanish, became part of the newly independent country of Mexico in 1821. Unlike most of the state of New Mexico, it was not part of the Mexican Cession after the Mexican-American War. It's actually located in areas sold to the United States with the Gadsden Purchase in 1853. It's unincorporated. Post office opened in 1909. The name Animas can be translated to lost souls or spirits or even souls of the dead. The infamous Clanton gang had dugouts here in the 1880s that served as hideouts for their outlaw activities. It's along what's called the Smuggler's Trail, as mule trains of contraband came from Mexico to be traded for merchandise over in Arizona. They do have a decent little community here. There's a nice high school, some interesting houses, a couple of businesses, but definitely pretty wide open here in Animas. The next community is a little bit of a mystery to me, so maybe someone out there can help me out in the comments. On my Google Maps it says Windmill, and it wasn't on my Gazetteer map. But as I pull it up, there's a couple of signs for churches, and I thought, well, that's a sign there might be something here to check out. So about a mile down this road, you come to a circle around the center of, I guess, the town, and there's not much remaining here. It looks pretty much like a ghost town, and in the center of this circle is a firehouse and like a rural fire department, and they have an RV park here, but there's not much else to see except a bunch of abandoned homes. Maybe there are some people living in these homes. Wikipedia said it was founded in the 1970s. Doesn't know why it was called Windmill, so definitely a interesting place to visit. Right near here, there was a settlement called Playas, and it was along the railroad. It it had a post office from 1912 to 1917. The railroad came through in 1902. But I mention that because just down the road we take a little short detour off onto a county road and come over to what looks like to be a town. As we pull up, there's a sign here that mentions the former town's name and a training center. And about another mile or so down the road, there's a old church abandoned on the left, and there's a couple of other buildings. And I was definitely curious as to what I was stumbling upon, as I saw that there were buildings off into the distance, and then it said no trespassing, New Mexico Tech. Well, it turns out that this is a former company town that was started in the 1970s for employees of the Hidalgo Copper Smelter. Over 270 rental homes and 6 apartment buildings, post office, store, other amenities were built in the community, and they had a peak population of around 1,100 people. The declining copper prices in 1999 accelerated the closure of the site, and all the residents were required to leave within a year. Then New Mexico Tech agreed to purchase the town and the surrounding area. It's now a training and research facility for first responders, counterterrorism, and Air Force programs.
So just a ways down there, I think I see it, is Hachita. And over here is supposed to be old Hachita down this road. And obviously you can't go down there. Looks like you need to get a permit or something. Mining, it was a mining town. Yeah, so it was, there's some abandoned buildings, at least I saw online, but I guess we'll just have to go see the current version of Hachita.
And here is the current version of Hachita. It's Spanish for little hatchet. And the previous mining town grew to about 300 people. By 1884, it had a post office from 1882 to 1898. Then the railroad tracks were laid this direction in 1902, and this town sprung up and took the name of the fading mining camp. Then Hachita was the railroad town, and the original town was named Old Hachita. And you can see some old, interesting buildings here along the main street. Post office was established here in 1902. The community grew with saloons, stores, and a hotel. The old Hachita continued until about 1920 and then became a complete ghost town after the mining operations ended. This new Hachita served as a base for forces during the punitive expedition organized in retaliation of Pancho Villa's raid on Columbus, New Mexico in 1916. At its peak in 1920, this town had over 750 in population. The last railroad train passed through in 1961. By 1970, there's only 30 people living here. Being only a few miles from the border, this area has been in the news for a hotbed of activities, including human trafficking, cartels, and illegal immigration. Certainly an interesting place to visit. Lots of abandoned buildings throughout the town, but a lot of history, and I'm definitely glad I stopped.
It's definitely a beautiful drive out here, and not very much traffic. The most common vehicle I see is a Border Patrol agent truck. I can see the wall. It's a few miles over here to the south, and it's interesting when you see it go like over a mountain. It's like, man, I think about the people who were building that wall on top of that mountain. So interesting. I mean, there aren't any roads that go over there. don't know about on the other side, but yeah, it's just desolate in this area. So interesting. It's, like I said, very beautiful. The railroad goes right next to us, the old railroad that was abandoned in the 1960s, and you can see evidences of like the bridges of it here and there, which is kind of cool to see. So yeah, enjoyable drive.
Previously, I had mentioned Columbus, and this is where we are now. It's the only incorporated town we're going to visit today. It was established in 1891, just a couple miles to the south on the border, named after Christopher Columbus. In 1902, it was moved here when the railroad was built through this area. 1905, it was pretty small, only 100 people, had one store and a saloon. By 1915, it had grown to 700, and the area around Columbus had rich mining deposits. 1916 was when famous Mexican revolutionary leader Pancho Villa led 500 men to attack the town. His army burned part of the town, killed some soldiers and residents before retreating back to Mexico. That prompted President Woodrow Wilson to respond by sending 10,000 troops to pursue Villa. It was known as the Punitive Expedition that I had previously mentioned in Hachita. The expedition was eventually called off after failing to find Villa. After that, Columbus started to change and decay over the decades, and the economy faded. But in the 1990s, Columbus started to revitalize with the development of city and state parks, museums, and history involving the city. You can see how the population has increased back up to over 1,400. This was where the original town was, and along the border, I thought I could just go down and check it out, and that's what the border at Columbus looks like.
So we've crossed into, I think it's Dona Ana or Dona Ana County, and that's the end of State Road 9, and now it's just a county road. And it seems to be a pretty much the same road. It just doesn't have state maintenance. I'm not sure why. It's the same road. We just keep going. I don't know why the state would stop at that county line, but looks good from here. I don't think there's much to see the rest of the way except a pretty drive into El Paso. So we'll enjoy the sights, and the sun is getting ready to set. So probably good that we're coming in towards the end of the day and the end of the road at the same time. That was just a quick, he asked me if I was a U.S. citizen. I said yes, and I drove through. I'm not sure I even stopped. I might have been going 2 miles an hour still. Well, I can see the end of the road ahead of me, and really haven't been finding much of anything here at the end of the trip. And so I was looking over to the right, and I saw something over maybe, across the way, and thought, what the heck, let me get the drone out. And sure enough, take it over there, and it's like an abandoned speedway. I have no idea what it was or how long ago it was abandoned, but very cool. And the sun is setting right now. It's just like a beautiful, drone shot. So if anybody knows what the speedway was or more information about the speedway, that'd be great. Sure is a good way to end our trip. I didn't have a lot of expectations for today's trip. I've never been down this way before, but I'm really glad I took this trip. Highly recommend coming down this way. There's some little towns, and there's some ghost towns, which I find interesting. some incredibly beautiful driving. So if you like just getting out on the road and driving, this is definitely a recommended road trip too. You have the wall that's always there, makes for an interesting dynamic to it. But yeah, really glad I took this trip. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of that video. And now that you're here, let me tell you a little bit about some of the extras that we have on the channel. One of the things you can do is you can become a member. There's 3 levels. There's the supporter level, there's the producer level, and the executive producer level. And all 3 levels have different perks, and as you are more supportive financially, there's more perks. We have extra videos every week and a lot of fun stuff going on in the member section. If you haven't done so, make sure you check out travelwithawiseguy.com. We've got lots of extra stuff on there, and one of the things is merchandise. You can get you Travel with a Wise Guy t-shirt. We have Death Go Round t-shirts. We have some coffee mugs, different things that are a lot of fun, and people seem to have enjoyed. Good quality there. Also on the website, you can do things like check out the Google map. I have a pin dropped in every place I've done videos about, then a link to the video so you can look at the map, and maybe there's somewhere where you live or somewhere you want to go. You can check out that map, and it seemed to be a very popular thing. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do that about every 3 weeks. It's totally free. And there's also all kinds of other links and tidbits in there, old videos, podcasts, just everything I could think of I throw on the website. So make sure you check out travelwithawiseguy.com.